Okay. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulullah. Amma ba'd. So there are a couple of incidents that we have not yet covered. I just want to go over the wives of the Rasulullah. We should know at least the names, so then we'll talk some more about them. So Khadija radiallahu anha, we all know, the most beloved wife of the Rasulullah in the Makki period. Then in Madinah we had Sauda bint Zam'a radiallahu anha. Then he married Aisha. And very shortly after he married Hafsa radiallahu anha, the daughter of Umar. Then he married Salama. There were two Zainabs that he married. There's Zainab bint Jahash, which was the cousin of the Rasulullah, and Zainab bint Khuzaymah. Zainab bint Khuzaymah is one of the only two wives of the Prophet who passed away in the lifetime of the Prophet. So besides Zainab bint Khuzaymah, who else passed in the lifetime of the Prophet? Khadija. So Khadija and Zainab bint Khuzaymah got the honor of being buried by the Rasulullah. And then the Prophet married Salama and Habiba. Salama was, she's quite prominent a figure in the seerah. In Hudaybiyah, it was Salama who was with the Rasulullah. We've covered the Hudaybiyah before. Habiba was the daughter of Abu Sufyan, the main enemy of the Rasulullah. But his daughter became a Muslim, and she had migrated to Africa, Ethiopia, Habasha. And so she was already married to this particular, at that time he was a Sahabi. This is a little sensitive, but there have been very few cases where the Sahaba became Muslim and then left the religion of Islam. There has been a case like this. If you remember in the Fatih Makkah, in the conquest of Makkah, the Prophet Muhammad said, everybody will be forgiven except these 6 people. There was a list of people that the Prophet said, these will have to be killed even if they're found at the Kaaba. Because there were some people who pretended to be a Sahabi or who became murtad, who changed. And of course, after the Prophet's passing, you're going to have a whole bunch of people going crazy. So this is surprising for many people, but actually, if you think about it, it's not that surprising. We've had this kind of problems. So unfortunately, the husband of Habiba in Africa, before the Prophet became a prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was one of the Hunafa, which is the people who would not believe in idolatry, but then they did not know what to believe in, right? So they were believing in one God, and they were just not knowing. They were thinking, this is all wrong, we should not do idol worship. So he was one of those. But once he went to Africa, he became a Christian. Okay, and so, again, I guess I can tell you this. Look at this example where this person goes to Habasha, goes to Africa, a Christian country like Canada and US, becomes a Christian, and the Prophet never in his life said to any Sahaba that you should not go to Africa because you have a potential of becoming like this, right? This idea that you hear in some of the countries that, you should not go to a Christian country or something just because you might be susceptible to becoming something. No. It is up to Allah to guide you and misguide you. If you don't want guidance, even in your home countries, you could be misguided. Okay, so Umm Habiba is that one. And she was, of course, she's our mother. She has a fantastic story about what she did when Abu Sufyan actually comes to Madinah just before the conquest of Makkah. We'll do that today, inshallah. So Habiba, Salama, and then we have Safiya radiallahu anha, who was originally a Jewish lady. She was taken after Khaybar. She was the daughter of the main enemy of the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is Huyay ibn Akhtab. Now we have done Ahzab before. In Ahzab, the entire Ahzab, which was a collaboration of Quraysh and the Jews, was financed by Huyay ibn Akhtab, this man. And Safiya is the daughter of Huyay ibn Akhtab. Huyay ibn Akhtab is now dead. At Ahzab, he was executed. And then eventually we have Khaybar, which we have not covered, that Ali radiallahu anhu was going to march forth and win the battle. And Safiya is a part of that victory. So she's going to marry the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then we have Juwayriyah radiallahu anha, the wife of the Rasulullah. And we have Maymuna radiallahu anha. Now Maymuna radiallahu anha was actually the sister of Zainab bint Khuzaymah. Remember I told you the two wives of the Rasulullah who passed away in the lifetime of the Rasulullah? So she is actually the sister of Zainab bint Khuzaymah. Obviously the sister is passed, so you can marry Maymuna radiallahu anha. So these are the wives that we commonly know about of the Prophet. We talked in the past weeks about Khadija radiallahu anha, Aisha radiallahu anha, Hafsa radiallahu anha, Zainab bint Jahash, Salama. We have covered quite a few. And Habiba. So Habiba, again, she's the daughter of Abu Sufyan. When the Prophet finds out that her husband is gone, has passed away, and he's become a murtad, the Prophet ﷺ himself sends a proposal for marriage to Africa. By this time, the Najashi, the king of Africa, is Muslim. So when Najashi gets the news that the Prophet himself is sending the proposal to marry Umm Habiba, he throws the biggest party. So the best, most expensive, most lavish party of all of the wives of the Rasulullah that was thrown was actually for Umm Habiba, which is befitting because she's the daughter of Abu Sufyan and she has suffered through so much. Eventually, when she comes to Medina, toward the end, we are now like at the very end. We have done Hudaybiyah. In Hudaybiyah, the treaty was that the Meccans will not allow anyone to go to Medina, and if anyone in Medina, any Sahabi, astaghfirullah, becomes a murtad, comes back to Mecca, he'll be allowed to come back. But if anyone in Mecca becomes a Muslim, he cannot be taken to Medina. All the surrounding tribes of Mecca and Medina were given a choice. You can be a part of Mecca or be a part of Medina. It was like NATO. NATO is actually learned from Hudaybiyah to become NATO after the World War. Choose a side. You want to be on Makki side or the Madani side? So there were many surrounding tribes. As the years are progressing, almost all the tribes are going on the Medina side. Even the tribes surrounding Mecca were choosing the side of Medina. And there were really a handful of tribes remaining now. One of them was Banu Bakr. Banu Bakr was a tribe that was still mushrik, and they were on the side of Mecca. And there was another tribe called Khuza'a. I don't know if you remember Khuza'a from Hudaybiyah lecture. Khuza'a was a tribe. Now, Khuza'a and Banu Bakr had a problem with each other. They used to have their Jahili fights. What happened was, Hudaybiyah is a very strict treaty. Even the Prophet, when he came to do Umrah, they did not allow the Prophet to stay for more than 3 days. That was the law. You are only allowed to come to Medina for Hajj, for Umrah, for 3 days and then leave. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ married Maymuna after this Umrah in Mecca. And when he married, he tried to negotiate with the Quraysh, said, let us stay for some more time. I just got married. We will do a walima. We will invite all of you. The guys who've been trying to kill the Muslims for so many years, he's saying, we'll all have party. Let's all eat food together. We'll cut lambs. But the Quraysh were completely in this war mindset. And they were like, we have no need of your food. Get out of here. And so the Prophet ﷺ has to abide by the treaty. And so he left. So they're going by exactly the letter of the law, right? It says 3 days, you have to be here 3 days and get out. Okay. If that's the case, if you do any violation of the treaty from your end, when the Sahaba are being tortured in Mecca and they're not allowed to go to Medina, well, all you need is one violation before this treaty is over. And that violation will happen now. So what happened was, Khuza'a and Banu Bakr have their own side problems. Khuza'a is on the side of Muslims in Hudaybiyah, and Banu Bakr is on the side of Quraysh. Banu Bakr had their own Jahili problems with them, and they thought, Khuza'a is getting rich and they have all this money, and in those times it was wild, wild west. Let's go and attack them, take their money and come back. You know, the women and children, they wouldn't know in the middle of the night. We slice some people, take the money and gold and rush. Who is going to know in the middle of the night? There's no CCTV cameras. So Banu Bakr comes to Suhail ibn Amr in Mecca. Suhail ibn Amr is the guy who had signed the treaty of Hudaybiyah with the Rasulullah. And he was very strict with the Prophet, if you remember, Hudaybiyah. And they say, listen, we want to settle our score with Khuza'a. Do we have the permission? Okay, so now this is the head. Makkah is the head, right? Suhail ibn Amr is the vice president of Makkah. Abu Sufyan is the leader, and Suhail ibn Amr think of him as the vice president. They're directly consulting that we want to settle our scores with Khuza'a. But the problem is we have signed a Hudaybiyah and there's supposed to be a peace treaty, and Makkah was trying to abide by the peace treaty up until this time. But they have a lot of money, and so Suhail ibn Amr not only said to them, yes, go ahead, and he also then made an agreement with them that we're going to get a portion of this money that you're going to get. So he gave them the weapons, told them what time to attack, completely participated in this. Abu Sufyan has no idea. Abu Sufyan is thinking we are still abiding by the treaty. If you remember, after Hudaybiyah, a couple of Sahaba who escaped from Mecca, they could not arrive in Medina. The Prophet asked them to leave because they could not do it. Abu Basir, if you remember, Abu Jandal, can do nothing. And so they settled near Jeddah, a small town in Jeddah. And then they started calling all the Sahaba to Jeddah. And then they started blocking, just like Medina used to block Mecca, they started blocking Mecca. And so Abu Sufyan had to write a letter to the Prophet saying, please, for the sake of our family kinship, please take them. We cannot have them here. And so the Prophet is following exactly the Hudaybiyah treaty, exactly. It's like a passport treaty. And these guys are now thinking, let us attack Khuza'a, let's get their money. And Suhail ibn Amr decides to give weapons and strategies and everything, and Abu Sufyan has no idea. Okay. Now that you've gotten a license, and may Allah protect us from this, when you get a license to be able to attack and nobody knows, that is when you see the worst of humanity. Look at what has happened in Rwanda, 1994. Before sunset, 800,000 people were slaughtered. 800,000 in Rwanda. Almost 1 million. Srebrenica massacre of Muslims in Bosnia. Once you have no oversight, no United Nations, no police, nobody there to help you, it's over. Then you see the real shaitan in the people. Banu Bakr has a license to go and attack and nobody would know. And Khuzaa is a small tribe outside of Madinah. There's no way to be there. And it'll be the middle of the night. We'll just take all the stuff and leave. They were not expecting people to be awake at that time. So Banu Bakr goes, attacks Khuzaa. But Khuzaa is Muslim now. And we know, inshallah, we also do this sometime every now and then. Inshallah, all of us, in the night time, we will stand sometime for tahajjud. Maybe we'll do suhoor for fasting, nafli fast. So as a Muslim, we know that nighttime is not a time for sleep only for us. It's a time for ibadah. So they were not expecting them to be awake in the night. The women, the children, the men. And they come in and they try to raid and there were people standing. Somebody's praying, somebody's doing something. And so the entire operation was botched. They come in, now what to do? And what do you do when you are about to be caught? Because if the message goes to Medina, that it was Banu Bakr, when you see the face, it's over. What do? Kill them. So Banu Bakr killed multiple people of Khuzaa. Women were also impacted. Now this is shocking because in the Arabian land at that time, women and children were not a part of any of this. To the point where now they know it's over, we got to kill them anyway, kill them all. So people are running around helter-skelter. One of the members of the Khuzaa, he rushed over to Mecca to seek protection in Mecca, because remember, even in Jahiliyyah, Mecca was a sanctuary. It was like a diplomatic embassy. Nobody can enter, nobody can touch me. He goes to the Kaaba for his protection. He says, I'm at the Kaaba. Fear Allah, fear Allah. Even in Jahiliyyah, they will say Allah. And a'udhu billah, I have to say this in masjid, but I'm telling you what they said. Astaghfirullah, otherwise this is kufr what I'm going to say. He says, there is no Allah today. At the Kaaba. Now, I want you to understand this level of betrayal before we know what's going to happen. The conquest of Mecca is not just going to happen out of the blue. The level of treachery that is involved at the Kaaba, this is what they said, right? And they massacred the members of Khuzaa. Anyway, next morning, now we find out what has happened. Khuzaa is now preparing their biggest case. They're going to present to the Rasulullah in Medina. This is what has happened, Ya Rasulullah, we need your help. Like imagine when, Ukraine is not a NATO member, but the country that is a NATO member, say Germany is attacked, they're going to give the biggest case to US and Canada and everybody. That's what happened, right? You attack one NATO country, that means you've attacked all the NATO countries. Well, Hudaybiyah is Muslim NATO, right? So you attack Khuzaa, it goes to the headquarters in Medina. So the greatest army is now going to arrive in Mecca as a result of this incident. Conquest of Mecca will happen because of this. So I'll get to what Khuzaa says, but on the Meccan side, Abu Sufyan is now finding out what happened. Oh my God. Suhail ibn Amr is now telling, this is what we thought, nobody's going to find out, they botched it up, now we are in trouble. So Abu Sufyan is panicking now. What am I going to do? So Abu Sufyan is panicking here, that finished. If they come and attack it, because slowly they're seeing all the people in Medina, all the people in Mecca are now turning toward Medina. Everybody's siding. They used to be on the side of Mecca, but now they're going on the side of Medina in the Hudaybiyah. We only had Banu Bakr remaining and they ruined it for us. So he's panicking here. Meanwhile in Medina, the members of Khuzaa, the Sahabi of Khuzaa come and they give the biggest, most tearful, emotional, poetic style of, you are a part of our brethren, you are our family from past generations, and this is what has happened after Hudaybiyah, and our women and children were massacred and this and that. It is the most moving story given in the most poetic style to the Rasulullah when peace treaty is signed, when they've done everything possible to preserve. The Rasul is listening to all of it, and then the Prophet says, and this is going to be Islam's greatest moment when we finally conquer Mecca, right? The Prophet says, you will be helped. Wallahi, you will be helped. May Allah never help me if I don't help you. This is an Arab saying, and he says this at this moment. Such a big, there cannot be a bigger collaboration than this. There cannot be a bigger affirmation that I will, we will, the entire Madinah, the entire Ummah is going to rise now for what you have done. You will be helped. So the greatest army is now going to be getting ready to conquer Mecca itself. But the Prophet is not going to tell anyone Not even his closest confidant, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, will find out until the actual day of leaving, the night before he's going to tell them. He's just saying, pack up, you're going to go for an expedition. They have no idea for what. So it was a top secret conquest of Makkah. We'll do inshallah Fatah Makkah one day. In the meantime, here Abu Sufyan is panicking. Abu Sufyan is now thinking, what do I do? So he can't think of anything except Suhail ibn Amr can go. He's the one who financed this. He's the only guy who is the head in Makkah remaining. He decides to go to Medina after all these years. He's only gone to Medina for Azab. Before that, Uhud, for Badr, only for fights. He decides to pack up and go to Medina and renegotiate Hudaybiyah with the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, the majority of the books that you will read in Sirah, especially today, they say that because of this incident, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam then directly attacked Makkah and took over. But there is a minority opinion which says that he did not directly come to Makkah. He negotiated first with Makkah and he gave them an offer, which they refused, and then this thing happened. So I'm just putting this in there just so you understand there is a second version. And that negotiation was that the Prophet said you have to pay blood money, pay diya for all the people that have died. Now, the blood money for one person dying is an amazing amount of money, 100 camels. They're going to be wiped out. The Quraysh, they don't have that kind of money remaining. After all the wars and battles, they don't have them. And they'll be completely poor. They'll be Congo or Zimbabwe or whatever. They'll be completely bankrupt. They will have no GDP remaining if Makkah gives away all the camels. That's all they have remaining. So they did not agree with that. Okay, you're not going to pay the blood money and you have done a massacre, then get ready for the consequences. So there is one version that says this happened. But even if the Prophet directly decided to go for attacking Makkah, completely fine, because they have violated the treaty. It's completely fine. So you can go with the majority opinion too. So Abu Sufyan arrives in Medina, and all these years that Abu Sufyan used to be arriving as the leader, and Khalid bin Walid on his side and Ikrimah on his side, it's all finished. Everybody's gone. Khalid bin Walid has become Muslim on that side. Everybody is on that side now. We're about to have Fatih Makkah now. And Abu Sufyan comes over. Now there are two versions. Again, Ibn Ishaq, the original Sirah book, says that he went to the Prophet ﷺ first. And Ibn Sa'ad's Tabaqat said that he first went to Abu Bakr and then Umar and then Ali and then Umm Habiba, his daughter. That's why we're talking about this. But anyway, I tend to gravitate toward the fact that he went to the Rasulullah ﷺ first. So I'll go with that version. So he goes to the Rasulullah ﷺ. And this is the famous thing. We know that the Prophet ﷺ refused to even look at him. Looking around, he's like, please, I just want to tell you, I had no idea this is what they did. Remember when the Prophet came to Makkah for Umrah and they would not even like, we have no need, get out. Remember how strict they were? And when Abu Jandal with the torture marks in Hudaybiyah, if you remember, and they're like, I don't care, he's not going to go to Medina. And Abu Basir comes in, all of that, nobody listened. Well, today is the day for Abu Sufyan to beg, and nobody will listen. And so he's saying, please, let us just renegotiate. Wallahi, we had no idea, and this and that, and we are on your side, we want to continue. Nothing. Remember what the Prophet said to Khuza'ah? Wallahi, you will be helped. It's over. No more negotiation now. Abu Sufyan then realizes nothing that I can do with him. He then goes to Abu Bakr, the best friend, in Abu Bakr's house. And Abu Bakr Siddiq, I've told this before, he is a gentleman. He is elegant. But when he is upset, especially when it comes to the Rasulullah, he is stronger than Umar. All three of them are going to have a different reaction. Abu Bakr Siddiq says, I cannot help you, get out of here. Very similar to the way Makkah said, get out. He says, don't even come to me, get out. Nothing I can do for you. So dejected, he goes to Umar. Umar not only says no, he mocks him. He says, wait a minute. You want me to help you against the words of the Rasulullah? That's what you want me to do? You really think I'm going to do that? You want me to help you not listen to the Rasulullah and do a negotiation treaty when the Prophet is saying no? Like, have you completely lost it? He's making fun of Abu Sufyan. Dejected, he then goes to Ali radiallahu anhu. And he himself, Abu Sufyan says when he goes back to Makkah, that Ali was the most reasonable of all of them. So Ali radiallahu anhu gave him some time, talked to him, and he said, there's nothing we can do. You don't understand how it works here. I'm paraphrasing. He says, you don't understand the system that we have here. Once the Prophet says something, it's finished. You think we are going to change something because you're crying or you're begging? Nothing. Once the Prophet has decided, it's decided. We're not going to go just by what you say. It's over. There's nothing we can do if the Prophet has said no. You just don't understand. That's how the system works in Medina. The reason why Ali had to say this is because Abu Sufyan is Banu Umayyah and Ali is Banu Hashim, and they were actually family. They were cousins if they go back a generation. So He was trying to give family ties of kinship and everything. He said, that's not how it works here. A Muslim is a Muslim is a Muslim. When he has no choice remaining, look at this. Allah is putting Abu Sufyan down now. Remember from where to where. Remember in Uhud when the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was injured and the blood was oozing out and everybody thought the Prophet has actually passed away in Uhud. Musab ibn Umair passed and he looked like the Rasulullah and the Prophet. People thought the Prophet has passed and there was a state of confusion. And he was yelling, is Muhammad alive? And the Prophet said, shh, don't say anything. Let him say. He says, is Abu Bakr alive? Shh, don't say anything. Is Umar alive? Let him be. Then he goes, Hubal Akbar, astaghfirullah, his idol. Now the Prophet says, stand up and say something. Because now he's insulting Allah. So then Umar gets up and says, the Rasulullah is alive, Abu Bakr is alive, and I'm alive, and we will take care of you. Allah is the one who's going to take care of you. Remember the arrogance that he had at the time. All of this is finished. And now he's begging one after the other. And now he sees Fatima radiallahu anha, who was a child in Makkah. Remember Fatima radiallahu anha when the Prophet Muhammad was made fun of when he was praying and Abu Jahl said, who's going to throw the carcass of the camel? And this Uqba ibn Mu'ayyid took the camel carcass and he dropped it on the Rasulullah at the Kaaba when the Prophet is in sajda. And Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, the Sahabi who used to carry the sandals of the Rasulullah and the water for the Rasulullah, he's looking at this, but he's a slave. He can't say anything. They're going to kill him if he says something. And he's watching this. So he does not know what to do. And they're laughing. They're laughing so much. Uqba ibn Mu'ayyid, when he throws this, Abu Jahl, in the books it says he was laughing so much that he fell off his chair when he was laughing, enjoying that scene. So Abdullah ibn Mas'ud then had contacted somebody, said, go and tell Fatima, 12-year-old girl, to help her father. And Fatima then came running and she pushed it and then she cursed at them. And then the Prophet Muhammad in a rare instance at this time said, Ya Allah, pointing, take care of Abu Jahl. Ya Allah, you take care of Uqba. Ya Allah, you take care of Umayyah ibn Khalaf. And Abdullah Mas'ud says, Wallahi, all 6 people that he pointed to Allah and to them, I saw all 6 of them at Badr in their deaths on the field of Badr. The first meeting the Muslims had with mushriks, gone. These are the most cursed people. Like, you cannot have a worse destiny than directly the Rasulullah is saying, take care of them. Astaghfirullah. May Allah protect us. So, this Fatima who was a child in Makkah is now a lady, the wife of Ali radiallahu anh. And now he's saying, oh my daughter, can you go to the Rasulullah? Because he knows she's the favorite daughter of the Rasulullah. Can you go and seek protection? She says, I can't do anything. So now look at this. Ali and Fatima have a son, this age, Hassan radiallahu anh. And he's playing, he's a kid, he has no idea what's going on. And he then says, oh young boy, for this young boy's sake, can one of you please have him give me aman? Because in Islam and also in Jahiliyyah, you can give your aman, your protection, your visa to anyone in protection. You can give it to, I can say I'm giving protection. Now we have a visa system in the modern world. But in the Muslim Darul Islam, you can give your protection, your visa, to whoever wants to come. And it can be given by a kid. So he says, can you go? Because he's the beloved grandson of the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Fatima says, my son does not even understand anything. He does not understand this politics or any of this. What you're talking to my son, he doesn't have any idea what you're saying. Like, look at, why are you humiliating yourself, is what basically she's saying. Ali sees this situation of Abu Sufyan. He then says, listen, stop embarrassing yourself. If you really want something, we can do anything. But go to the mosque, Madinah Masjid, stand there, and ask anyone in the masjid if anybody can help. Just openly ask them. Because we can't do anything here for you. That's the last resort. So look at this. This leader, this man who was so arrogant, now he has no choice remaining except that he has to go to the masjid and beg anyone, is there anyone who can protect us? Protect me, give me aman. And no Sahabi says yes. Nobody by now, Madinah Masjid, you can only imagine, must be full. Because this is at the end of the seerah. And no one voice, nobody gets up. Now he has lost all hope. So he decides to leave. But before he leaves, this is why we were talking about this. He decides to go visit his daughter. The last ray of hope remaining. This is my own blood. Yes, I've not seen her for 13 years. He has not seen his daughter for 13 years. She was forced to go to Africa. Remember the tortures going on in Makkah. That's when she had last seen her father. And then all these wars that have happened. Now he goes to his daughter, Habiba, and she is going to be more vociferous in her behavior than all the Sahaba. That's why I'm talking about Habiba than our mother. As soon as Abu Sufyan enters, Habiba, the bed of the Rasulullah was there, obviously, the mat or fiber mat or whatever the Prophet used to sleep on. As soon as Abu Sufyan enters, she takes the fiber mat and immediately pulls it over to protect the fiber mat. That's what she's concerned about, the Prophet's bed, because he's going to come and sit on it. Abu Sufyan says, are you protecting the bed from me, or are you protecting me from the bed? He's like, what are you doing? Because this is his daughter. He's thinking, this is my daughter, she should be on my side. He's like, are you protecting me from the bed or the bed from me? And Habiba says, this is the bed of the Rasulullah. And anta mushrikun najis. You are a najis, dirty, filthy, stinking mushrik. The man who tried to attack my husband, the Rasulullah. The man who forced us to go to Africa, and then she lost her husband there for whatever happened there. The Sahaba who went to Africa were not able to see the Rasulullah until Khaybar. Khaybar is really, really late. Badr has happened, Ahzab, Uhud, all of these major incidents have happened. The Sahaba could not see. Remember I told you a couple of weeks ago when Asma bint Umais was there, and Umar is sitting with his daughter Hafsa, and Asma bint Umais, another Sahabiya, is sitting. He says, who is this Asma bint Umais? He says, Asma? The Habashiyya, the one from Africa? She says, yes. He says, you guys had it easy. Like we were the one fighting Badr and Uhud and this and that, and you guys came straight to Khaybar and now you guys are enjoying. She became so angry. With Umar. The Sahaba would not dare to say something to Umar. She's so angry. She says, La wallahi, you are the one who at least had the Rasulullah in your presence. You knew how he is doing what he's doing. Yes, in Uhud the Prophet also has bleeding, but you were able to take the teeth out. You were able to do something with it. You were able to touch him. The spit of the Rasulullah, the barakah of the Rasulullah. You're telling me we had it easy when we're sitting in Africa in a different country, in different culture, and you guys are the ones who are struggling? Wallahi, I will not eat, sleep, or drink until I go to the Rasulullah myself and ask him who's the one who had it easy. She goes to the Rasulullah and the Rasulullah says, is that what Umar said to you? He says, this is what Umar said. He says, tell him, you have the ajr of 2 hijrahs. They have the ajr of 1. He has done 1 hijrah from Makkah to Madinah. But you have done 2 hijrahs, to Africa and then to Medina. This was the greatest, most beautiful good news that you can imagine. She became so happy listening to this, comes back, and all the Sahaba and Sahabiya who had done hijrah to Africa, all day kept arriving at Asma bint Umais' house and said, tell us, what did the Prophet say? He said, we did 2 hijrahs. We are 2 hijrah. We are hijratain. Everybody is so happy all day. And they wanted to come and listen from the direct words of Asma bint Umais. Tell me directly what the Prophet said. So imagine all the sacrifices Habiba has been going through, radiallahu anha. And so she says, you are not going to touch the bed of my Rasulullah. And anta mushrik najis. When she says this one line is enough for him to understand. I was thinking I have a hope with Ali, Fatima, and Abu Bakr, and Rasulullah himself, or Umar. This beats everything. He says, you have changed for the worst. And he leaves. For him, worst is Islam, right? So change for the worst. And he leaves. He has no more choice. Abu Sufyan is so defeated, so dejected, goes back and he just says to his people, prepare. It's over. Nothing I could do. And in fact, when he tells the story to the Makkis again, they say that they just made a fool out of you. When he asked you to go and beg in the masjid, they were just making fun of you. That's what they said to Abu Sufyan. But anyway, this is now when eventually the Muslims are now going to get ready to come and conquer Makkah. And there's a whole chapter we can cover, inshallah, in the next successive halaqah, where the conquest of Makkah is going to happen. Makkah is going to be conquered itself, Makkah itself. That is the greatest incident in the seerah, the fatah of Makkah itself. Now, I did say that the Prophet said that these 6 people will not be forgiven. They will be killed even if you find them at the Kaaba. But even in those 6 people, 3 will be forgiven, eventually. We'll cover that in Fatih Makkah, inshallah, sometime. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.